All right, welcome back to Preds Power Hour. Yeah, that's what we're calling it. I figured it out after recording last week where I was like, what could we call this? What could we brand this? How do we do this? And I went in the lab, as the kids say, and I came out with Preds Power Hour. So Bryan, Bastin, and Charlie Burris are here, as they are every single week here on this program. Charlie, though, we have to start with you. How was the airport surprise? How did everything go?
It was great. Last week I had to bounce out early. It was my wife's birthday that day. Took myself and both of our sets of parents, because they are friends. Even our parents are friends also. We all went to the airport, and I took giant balloons, and I embarrassed my wife as she walked back out from the terminal. And we all sang "Happy Birthday," and people clapped. It was really funny. It's
Awesome.
actually great.
So you got other people involved. There you go.
Yeah. And as we were walking out, because of the balloons, they were so noticeable. People were like, "Oh, happy birthday!" Yeah, it was good stuff. I would say it was. I hate dodging out of stuff early, but it was worth the juice was worth the squeeze there, I guess.
No, but you locked in some good husband points for football season. You got to accumulate as many as possible before football season pops back up.
Well, what has always helped in that, and shout out to A to Z, has been money for the most part. I basically go to my wife and I go yeah, Saturdays are going to be locked down, which they would be whether I was getting paid or not. To talk about Tennessee football. But after A to Z was like, yeah, we'll let you do a show and give you money for it. And then Allison was like, well, if I got to stay at the house, I mean, at least we're getting a little bit of cash for it, So,
right.
That definitely helped over me just dragging her to Tennessee football games like I did for years before that. So, that helps.
So you were at UT, right, Charlie?
Yeah, went to UT twice, longer than I should have probably.
Me too, actually. So yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah, no, we're all the Masters UT people. That's our jam. We love getting Masters at UT. That's our jam. The amount of money the three of us have given the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, we should get a plaque.
Oh yeah, I think so.
We deserve some sort of plaque on campus somewhere.
Yeah, literally, they did send me a piece of paper, but they could, you could have framed it or something. I've given you enough money at this point. Come on, guys.
Well, it looks like my graduation this December, I think they're possibly going to put it at Neyland instead of TBA, which is what I'm hoping for. The rumor is it's going to be at Neyland, which I'm here for it because I was nervous about that. I'm like, look, I love TBA, but Neyland graduation, that's the good stuff. Night graduation at Neyland. Even if it's December, might be a little cold, but it might not because it's Tennessee and it might be 65 degrees on December 15th. I don't know.
I would have, that'd been great. I mean, if they had given me the option to graduate in Neyland Stadium, I would have actually had a few more positive memories of being in Neyland Stadium back in that time. So
yeah, I mean, well, I would have actually for the master's program, I just decided not to walk. Because I did it undergrad. I did, and it was cool then. And so I was just like,
wait, hold on. You skipped out on the whole hooding ceremony. You were like, I don't need to get hooded in public.
Is that what they do for?
Yeah, I'm getting hooded.
I have a master's degree and literally don't know what they.
I didn't do it. Hooded. I didn't do it either. So don't feel
Y'all
bad.
didn't do the hooding?
Well, I was 3 weeks into a new job when that was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I was working. Yeah. So
okay.
I just
well, I'll let y'all know how it goes.
Yeah. I hope it's good, especially if it's in Neyland. That's gonna be sick.
Yeah.
Dude.
Fingers crossed. That's the rumor. So that'd be cool because I think it's always generally speaking in TBA. But yeah, the rumor is Neyland, which is kind of weird because of COVID and everything else. You would assume that Neyland would have picked up being the outdoor venue the last couple of years instead of in the auditorium and in a building, in an arena. But that is neither here nor there. Go UT all the time. As Bryan and Charlie and I say, Tennessee is an everything school. People forget. But the Nashville Predators have some stuff that we need to discuss, guys. Bryan, when you look at the week that was, the Preds, they're not slowing down. They're just like, no, we have some more content for these guys this week. We're going to keep signing folks. We're going to keep this thing churning. What do you make of their latest big signing on a 2-year deal, Mr. Nino?
Yeah, Nino Niederreiter. He's a guy that I liked. In fact, I think a couple weeks ago, I just talked about him being a guy that kind of was in that realistic range of what they could do, who they could sign. I think he is, well, and this is not saying much, but, he's going to replace what Luke Cunnin did last season on that second line. And that upgrade's like going from the Nissan pickup, the 92 Nissan pickup, which was my first car that I had to keep a can of oil in. Just to make sure that kept running. That's kind of the Luke Cunnin experience last year. And with Nino, I would say, it's like upgrading yourself and getting you like a 2020, pickup truck. It's not top of the line. It's nothing too special, but it's a big difference compared to what we saw before. Luke Cunnin, again, all 82 games last season. Looking at some advanced numbers, I try not to dig too hard into those advanced numbers like that, but according to Evolving Wild and their metrics, Cunnin was the 6th worst forward in the NHL out of 653. So yeah, and again, you want to give a young guy like that a chance. He was part of that trade that came in, so they really wanted to give him that chance to kind of earn it. But he was a restricted free agent coming in there. He wasn't going to get qualified, so they traded him. But Nino is an excellent upgrade. He's a guy who had 24 goals, I believe, last season. As the Carolina Hurricanes very nicely pointed out yesterday, that he did end his Hurricanes career with 69 goals, so that's pretty cool.
It's also pretty nice.
It's very nice. And 68 assists, so almost doubled up and got it, perfect. But no, I mean, he's a player that's going to bring a lot to this team. He's a really, really great playmaker. He's a above average passer. He's a guy that can get in there, get in space, but he's also definitely not afraid to come in and get in those high danger areas, get there in the slot, push things in. A couple years back when Nashville played Carolina, seemingly about 400 times during the COVID season, he was one of the guys that kind of instigated a lot of stuff. I think him and Mikael Granlund got into a spat during one game, and I think he did almost hurt UC Saros at one point. But I think the best thing about this whole signing is the story that came out about Roman Josi and his role on getting him to the team. Again, a fellow Swiss player. They've been close for some time. I think Nino was pretty much set on he was going to be an Anaheim Duck. Wednesday night, he said, I went to bed thinking I was going to be in Anaheim. Roman Josi texted him at like 12 p.m. that night and said, tell me how much money that you're wanting. I will talk to the Preds and we will get this done. And the next morning he was signed for a deal, 2 years, $4 million, which is absolutely a bargain for this guy. It's a short deal. So basically a bridge deal to help them decide what they wanted to. And, I think it was probably a really good move, a really smart move. Hats off to Poile on this one, because that was an excellent deal he made. And it does fill a pretty good hole in that top 6 and makes them a little bit stronger.
What do you think, Charlie?
So this was literally what we talked about last week, if I'm remembering correctly, kind of what we said. It was just like criticism of Poile is that he's just made these moves that don't get you closer to scoring more goals. And this actually does that. Thank God. Like he actually brought in somebody who, 20 goal scorer and actually brings some heat as far as that goes. You're replacing a guy who I did not realize Cunnin was that bad. That's horrific. But, it's kind of filling or upgrading, I guess, not just filling a hole, but really upgrading. And that's good. I would say, as far as this goes, is it an indictment of Poile at all that it basically took Roman Josi going, I'll get this done, and it wasn't I mean, obviously Poile is the manager, and at the end of the day it gets handed off to him in that scenario. But the fact that Josi spearheaded it, obviously he's the captain, and so I'm sure he's involved in when that stuff gets talked about behind closed doors. But does that, I don't want to say this is sounding an alarm or anything like that. I'm happy he did it at the end of the day, and that's good. But should I go is this just another sign that Poile is actually not really making moves like this? He kind of had to be forced into it. Is that cynical? I mean, it is cynical, but is it too cynical?
I mean, I wouldn't think. I mean, yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that, and maybe that's what again, Josi was what was needed to kind of push the deal over. But obviously they probably had talks prior to that. Again, to get him to sign for $4 million a year when a lot of projections had him in the 6-7 range. There had to have been a bunch of work that had to be done before that. Again, Yossi asking him how much money he wanted, and he said $4 million. That, that's kind of impressive that he came that much under what most people were valuing him at. And so, yeah, there's not been a lot of transparency as far as how those negotiation processes went. But I mean, you've got a valid point. But hey, if you've got a guy like Roman Yossi, use him to your advantage. I'm sure this isn't the first case, on any team, let alone the Predators, where they've had, a player really push for a guy he likes to come to a team. So
it should be interesting. Do you think they're done though, Bryan? Is this it? Is this one of the last ones, or do you think there's still another 2-year interesting bargain signing that's out there that they might go after?
Yeah, I think so. I think they've got around a little over $4 million in cap space left last time I checked. Part of that is going to probably be taken up by Yakov Trenin. He's a restricted free agent. He elected for arbitration, which really didn't surprise anybody. Arbitration obviously is, they have a set structure for players when they come out of their restricted free agent year about how much the qualifying offer has to be. And I think both the Preds and Trenin knew that the offer that they put out there is probably below what they both want, what Trenin wants to get paid and what the Preds want to pay him. So I'm guessing what they did is they let him go ahead and elect for arbitration, and they're probably going to work for the next 2.5 weeks or so on getting a deal done beforehand. I would be very surprised if it's not done by about this time next week. Probably be another 2-year deal, probably around, I don't know, let's say 1.4 million a year. And I think he kind of earned that, being one of the few Predators that showed up during the playoffs last season. A guy you probably wouldn't have never expected to be that guy and getting so much time in the NHL, but he's a fun player to watch. He's aggressive. He's a big hitter. He fits perfectly in John Hines' system. So I would say he's probably going to get signed, probably putting them closer than to a little under $3 million. So free agents, I'm not sure. I think that they're kind of set in that. Not necessarily where I would like to be as far as, the bottom half of the roster. But I think if anything happens, it'll probably be a move, at a trade. And because I think, we still have to watch and see what's happening with Ingram. And then, of course, I don't know that they're going to be out of the sweepstakes for Tkachuk, but there's going to be a lot of movement to make that one happen if they do so.
I was going to ask, because obviously Tkachuk's up in the air. The conventional wisdom is he's going to St. Louis, but St. Louis is super crunched on cap space.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to stuff about it this morning, actually. And supposedly they're probably going to have to get a third team involved in any trade there. So I wonder if you don't get Tkachuk, are the Predators an outside contender to be involved in that circle? I don't know. I mean, obviously I would love to have Matthew Tkachuk, but he's like from St. Louis, right? He's like sort of set on that whole thing. But that, I mean, man, that would change my opinion of Boyle if he were to go out and get Tkachuk. But
oh yeah, most definitely. He's a really dynamic player. He'd become probably right on that same level as Philip Forsberg, Matt Duchene. He's a younger player, which is fantastic. We're not putting lots of money into a guy that's 27, 28 like they just did with Forsberg, but I think that's an exception. So that would be something. But I think some of the roadblocks is one, they'd have to move some salary. Calgary's in a little bit of a crunch because he went for arbitration. They'd have to offer him, if he doesn't sign, he'd have to be like a $7 million deal if he doesn't get traded for 1 year, which obviously no team really wants that. And so we're probably going to see some guys, moving out. I think a package that would, get Tkachuk to come to Nashville and make it work for the teams involved. I would not be surprised to see once again them float Ryan Johansson in his contract. He had a better year last season than he had since he played for Columbus. Obviously he kind of got overshadowed by Duchene and Forsberg, but he had a really, really great season. And, it's going to be an upgrade with Tkachuk if that's what happened. But, that's not probably the thing that would be a little bit concerning. I think they'd want to see a package that includes somebody like a Dante Fabro, Ellie Tolvanen, maybe Matthias Ekholm. And then, they'd have to take a long, hard look at what they're willing to give up. Because I imagine Calgary would be like, yeah, let's throw in that Askarov guy in there too, which I don't know that the Predators are ready to do something like that. So it's going to be interesting. They're going to have to they have to clear space. They'll probably have to retain a little bit to get some, to make that work. And then, he probably wants to sign a long-term deal. And so, in addition to just getting them to agree to trade him, if they want to use that RFA status to get 8 years, which that would be something if Poyle added another 8-year deal to this roster. You know, it would take a lot of work, and I think St. Louis is still the front runner for that. You know, but Tkachuk, again, like you said, this is a much better team with him. I think Nashville is slightly upgraded, a little bit better than they were last season, but I don't see them really moving the needle in the playoffs, you know, much like last year. And so a guy like Tkachuk is kind of what you've got left. So, oh, and of course, there's also, you know, Phil Kessel, which is just, again, purely a good move, purely for the entertainment. So,
well, with that, what I wonder is if the Predators did become the third team in that whole carousel, could you get in for who's the main guy in St. Louis? Why am I drawing a blank? They won the cup with him.
The goalie?
No,
like Rob Thomas.
Well, yeah, I mean Rob Thomas, one of the main guys. No, he's a foreign guy. Why am I just drawing a complete blank?
I also am drawing
and the thing that I was listening to this morning said that they would probably have to move him if they brought in Tkachuk.
Ryan O'Reilly?
No, frick. I think he's like Russian.
Tarasenko.
Yes,
yeah, there it is. Wow,
Tarasenko. Yeah.
Tarasenko. They said they might have to move. Now he's old. I don't know if that would even be worth. You know,
he's only 29.
Oh, is he? Okay, he's not as old as I thought. I thought he was kind of mid-30s. But you know, if you. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but if he gets moved in that, you know, maybe you kind of get a guy like that on the cheap, so to speak, if you were able to do that. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I know that as I said, the things that I've read said that he's probably in the block that would get moved in anything for Tkachuk with St. Louis.
Yeah, and that'll be a little bit difficult. He's got that no trade clause, so he would have he'd have to be with. I mean, I think it's usually one of those submit 10 teams that you're okay with type of a thing. So
it seems about as likely as Vanderbilt winning the SEC East this fall. But shout out to that one guy at Media Day who gave Vanderbilt a first place vote. An incredible troll job. Well, what about Zach Sanford, Brian? You're all in on the Zach Sanford signing. You've been saying for days, you were like, this is the guy who is absolutely going to be playing NHL hockey next season. No doubt about it. He will not be in the AHL. He is someone that I absolutely am ready for and prepared for. And along with every other Preds writer and analyst, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think you just basically read the message I sent you about 20 minutes before we started recording. That was like, yeah, I know everything about this guy, but I can give a little bit now. I've done a little bit. So this is a guy who's been basically a journeyman. He's been in the league about 7 years. He started with the Capitals. He had 4 years in St. Louis, Ottawa for a year, Winnipeg. Career wise, he's got 47 goals, 48 assists, 95-point guy. I think he's going to be a fourth line player. I think his deal is going to keep him in the NHL. He's going to be that guy that fills a role like Michael McCarron or something like that. But for a comparable, he's essentially Nick Cousins. Not as great on defense. It is a little bit of a downgrade in my opinion, as far as, you know, going from him to Cousins, but you know, he's a cheaper pickup. He's a guy that you can get in there and, you know, he'll probably be in and out of the lineup, you know, with guys like Tommy Novak and Cole Smith, both of them who got 2-way contracts again, this deal. So he's okay. I mean, he's a fourth line player. You're not expecting much. You just want him to get in there, slow the game down, and make sure goals aren't scored against. And so we'll see. He had no goals last year in 18 games with Winnipeg. His career high is 16, I believe, with St. Louis back in 2019, 2020. So I wouldn't expect a whole lot out of him. He's purely a depth signing. I don't think that, you know, if he's out of the lineup and they bring up one of the AHL guys, I think you're going to get pretty much the same type of production. So yeah, that's just one of those cheap signings that fills the holes that are kind of left by the departing free agents, and it'll be interesting to see how he does. I'm very curious to be able to sit down and watch more tape on him. There's not a lot from last year with Winnipeg, but you know, see what he can do. And yeah, that's cheap signing. You can't really hate it one way or another because it's just a probably, you know, real cheap deal. And I guess we'll see.
He's another high flyer, though. He was highly picked. He was a 61st overall pick 9 years ago. So he's still late 20s. I mean, hey, high pedigree. And it's just a flyer. It's just one of those guys you just throw in the group and you see what happens. And it's no real risk here bringing in Sanford, I think, by and large. When you look at Nashville's offseason moves, Charlie, where do you come down on them around the NHL? Do you feel pretty good about what they've done this offseason in comparison to what other teams are doing?
Kind of like Bryan said, just as it currently sits, I don't think you're looking at a Cup team as it is.
Well, was there a path to making them a Cup team this offseason?
If you made an extreme move like picking up Kachuk, I mean, I think that's an all-in move. You're really going for it, and that, as I said, that's where I would be really impressed. Of course, I'm the same type of guy that I was like for my Titans. I was like, mortgage the future, sell it all off, get me Tom Brady, get me Aaron Rodgers. I don't care. I want to win a Super. So I'm that same kind of guy. I like.
You don't deserve nice things. You ruined Julio Jones. You ruined the memories. We gave you Julio. We were like, here's this Ferrari. Take care of it. And you Julio. Did no such thing.
Yeah, no. And that, yeah. Don't even get me started. I could go for an hour on that. Mm-hmm. But just that's kind of where I come from on that. And I don't know that there is a way that they could have really built back to that Cup team status, because you just look at how good these good teams are right now. I mean, Tampa's going to have to shave off some pieces. Their main guys are getting older, and they're going to have to deal with that, and it clearly showed. I mean, the Avalanche just were skating circles around them. I don't know that I watched a single game in that series where I was like, Tampa's really they've played well in this game. They're really controlling this game. The Avalanche just had a stranglehold.
Well, we saw it in person. It was the Avalanche series was horrific. Where you're just like, I remember I said something to my fiance where I was like, it's weird watching a game where it feels like you're Vanderbilt football, where you're just trying to hold the line. Like that's all it is. You're not scoring, and you're just like, can we get to 0-0 into the third period? Can we hold it that much? And it was a weird series from that perspective, where it's just like.
I had some false hope going into that series, because I think 2 weeks earlier we had gone to Colorado and won in like overtime. We had beaten them, I think. And I was like, well, we did beat them a couple weeks ago. And then you just see it stretched out to a whole series, and you're just like,
not nearly enough catfish magic. We needed some more catfish.
It's just nowhere close. And it totally sailed by Poile. It's what makes me the most frustrated, is because he had the opportunity to really make all-in moves, also the opportunity to totally shake things up, and he did neither of those at either time. And now, talking about the Titans, you're really in a position to kind of do what the Titans did this offseason and sort of just admit, like, Super Bowl window might be closed. We're gonna have to. AJ Brown's got to go, and we're making room, and we're just gonna see if we can, shift some pieces around, see what happens. And I think the Predators are even further down that rabbit hole than the Titans are, because the Titans still have a fresh Derrick Henry and stuff like that. But, you just have an aging Yossi and, relatively speaking, an aging Forsberg, just some things like that, where your best pieces are probably on the other side of the hill.
Yeah.
And I
it's also like, I don't know what the right moves
would have been, but.
I'm also kind of surprised, or I guess it's something to monitor over the next couple of years, Bryan, is that like he's 72 now, and he has been this GM for over 20 years. And I wonder if you start to get antsy. We see this owner syndrome where like the Lerners, the Illich family, when you're getting up there, you're like, all right, we got to figure something out. Not to get morbid, but it's like, hey, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be GMing the Predators. Like, I don't know how much longer I want to do this day to day. Right? Like that's something to consider, is like, I wonder if he goes all in sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be his kid right after too.
Yeah. So there's a lot to think about with that, and we can bring all this back and make this Tennessee talk that we had earlier worth it. We saw that Bill Haslam joined the ownership, is going to be joining the ownership group, on a path to becoming a majority owner. And, so that may be, the ownership group may be happy with how Poile is doing things and letting him kind of go at his own pace and things, but things could change. I mean, this is Haslam, and he's one of those guys, as we all know, he's willing to dump money into things to make, give the team an advantage. It's not quite the same as what you would do with SEC football. He's not building, Vanderbilt a new band building like they did for us when I was there, but
he doesn't strike me as the same personality type as Jimmy. It seems like they're wired differently.
Yeah, a little bit.
I've actually interacted with him some amount. I used to work.
Bill, not Jimmy.
Yes, Bill specifically. Okay. I interned at a marketing firm way back around my college days and ended up working some amount on his governor campaign at that marketing firm.
Yeah.
And he is really, really mild mannered.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know Jimmy at all. I'll say he's really Bill's the
He
only
just doesn't
Haslam.
seem that at all.
Yes, like there are guys where you would go like, oh, he's probably going to come in and like really take charge. He's doing this for a reason, kind of like a hostile takeover sort of situation, where it's like I want to buy in so that I can correct this thing. I don't get that vibe off of Bill. Not to say that he'll make bad.
It's like
moves.
an investment where he's like hands off. He's like, Boyles have got it. They're cooking. Like, I'm fine. I just want to own the team and be part of Nashville and have a sports team that I own.
That's kind of what it feels like, because like Jimmy's a meddler. Like I said, I don't know him personally, but he just hands on everything. If it doesn't go his way, just look at the way he just has driven the Browns into the ground. I mean, it's just
it's also just seeing the completely different ways of building, where he's like, all right, we're gonna do Moneyball. All right, never mind. Now we're giving a crazy guaranteed contract to name redacted and all of that. Like, it's just there's no long-term planning, it feels like, where he's just like, we're dumping wherever, and if you get his attention, it's kind of like a Vince McMahon thing to me, is who he reminds me of, where Vince was always like someone who, it was reported that he just would always scrap the script right before a show. Like, that's just what he does, is he's just like, this is gonna work right before. I could see Jimmy Haslam just like, this is not gonna work, and it's like, it takes time, and it's like, no, get somebody else in here, let's see what they have to say, and that's how he is. I don't think Bill is like that.
I hope not.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, but on the other hand, again, he might be the push that says, hey, this ownership group, they've been happy with what Poyle has done. Obviously, Poyle's riding off that cup run, and he's been the only GM, but he also doesn't have a cup, and so yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible that he tries to go all in, these next couple of years to try to get that for himself. But, I wouldn't be surprised that once Haslam, is in the fold fully, that he pushes. And I think that might be a good argument, or at least, that he wants to open that GM search up and not just go and pass it on to Brian Poyle, which we've asked a couple of times. And the official answer is, there's no plans on succession or anything of that, but you have to take that with a grain of salt. So.
And as we've seen with the HBO hit show, succession is relatively easy. It's a relatively easy process that should be totally fine and normal.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think at all that they have a mind on cashing in on the trendiness of Nashville at the moment? Because it seems like it was always, especially when the Titans moved there. And I guess I think this because I just, half my family's lived in Nashville my entire life. I was born there in Nashville, lived there till I was 5, and have gone there a billion times since then. I never thought of it as like a real destination. And then in the last 10 years, it's become this like really hip spot where you got actual celebrities that live in the city. You have actual, culture and, food and all of these things that weren't really there in the past. And I wonder if they have a mind, especially Haslam, just because he's a guy that just loves to see his name on buildings and, all of that type of stuff. If he's kind of like, this is a thing like that could help. Obviously it helps the city if you have a great team that you can have, like they did, where they had the big watch parties and all that stuff. And you kind of go, maybe we can attract players too, because that was sort of the situation with Duchesne.
Right.
He was sort of like, I love Nashville, country music. He's like friends with Luke Bryan or whatever. And I wonder if there's sort of like, maybe we can cash in on Nashville's up and comingness and get some guys now that it's actually an attractive place to come and be, and not just like, oh, it's a big city in the South.
Oh yeah. I mean, the cup run helped that a lot. Everybody kind of sees, another thing I've learned in covering is that a lot of, especially Canadian players, they're just big. They're all big country music fans. They're all,
that's what I was kind of thinking. Yeah.
And, there's that. But I mean, one of the biggest things for Nashville that's helped them is the state income tax, and they're not being in it. So, Nino's $4 million goes a whole lot farther here than it would, say, down in Florida or out in California or something like that. And so that definitely does help. Retaining guys like Philip Forsberg and Roman Josi, who are, some of the best players from their countries, in the world. So you've got that. They see that you've got, commitments with Matthias Ekholm and Matt Duchene, Mikhail Granlund, another Swiss player. Again, that's something that, they have. I'm sorry, he's not Swiss, but he played with him in Minnesota. Sorry. And, so there's a lot of things that went well for that. And there's a lot to offer for teams. Obviously, the hardest part, though, from a lot of free agents or trades is to say, this might be a great place for you to come and play for a few years. But, is this going to be a place where you're going to be able to win a cup in the next couple of years? And so far, I'm not sure that that's going to be possible. Ton of times in the last few years, you get into that place with a certain football team or something, where we're just like getting a bowl game. That's where they need to be. Doesn't matter what bowl. It could be the something in Shreveport. And the next year, that's how last year was for the Preds for me. I think getting into the playoffs was basically where they needed to get to kind of continue where they were growing. As they are now, they might be a second round team. I just don't think that they have that firepower the way that the team plays. They're not a transition, a high flying. They're not Colorado. They're kind of the opposite of how Colorado plays. They're tough. They want to keep you on the boards. They want to forecheck hard and create turnovers to create those offense. And so, we're going to have to see. Tkachuk would drastictically change the outlook for this team for me, especially in the near future. I think that's a mortgage the future move too. But that's it. Hopefully, if they can get a guy like Tkachuk to come here rather than St. Louis, I think they've kind of got to that point where maybe they're a destination team now. And so we'll see how that turns out.
Is Tkachuk a fan of party buses? How do we know?
Probably pedal taverns, things like that.
Yeah. Does he enjoy honky tonks? Can he?
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, like you said, dude, all those Canadian guys, you see them, they love country music is huge with that set. So who knows, man.
And it seems like a lot of country music stars like dating hockey players. It seems like there's a crossover there too. I don't know, because I think I don't know. That's an interesting thing to monitor. But my head's just in Murfreesboro and really getting Murfreesboro popping so we can bring back Middle Tennessee State Blue Raider football and where that program's at. That's where my headspace is at. Nashville's going to be fine. I want to bring Murfreesboro back. That's what I'm ready for.
They got some culture out that way. You got like Arrington Vineyards is like 15 minutes down the road.
There you go.
You got some stuff out there,
Okay,
it's coming up.
There you go.
Yeah.
We'll end on this. One more move that you would like to see them make, Charlie. What is one final move? If it's not, is it? You don't have to go the all-time move to get them back in serious cup contention. Like, let's just remove the Flame Star from this. Is there one particular thing that you've got your eye on that you would like to see them do in the next week or so?
Admittedly, I don't know the free agent market off the top of my head that well to be like, it would definitely be that guy, but it would be more, I would put it this way, just more in the vein of this Niederreiter move. It's just actually an emphasis on scoring and just a switch up from what they've been doing. Like, at what point does the management of the team go, the stuff we have been trying to do is not working? We are losing in the first round every single year, and the best team in the league embarrassed us completely. Like, at what point do they go, all right, maybe we should do something different? Because just don't be like the University of Tennessee, where it took the whole thing getting torn down to the ground. Don't let it get there. That's all that I ask. And it doesn't seem like they're gonna do that. You said it, at this current form, they may be a second round team. I think even this past year, they're probably a second round team if they play Dallas in that first round. If they would have just won the final game of the season, they maybe could have made it to the second round.
Yeah.
But that still is just, it's just mediocrity. And surely Poyle is like, what can I do to get a cup? Just something with urgency. That's what I would say. Something with urgency is what I would like to see. And I don't know if that's going to happen. But Bryan, you knowing the market at the moment probably better than I do, you watching it every single day, who would that be
Yeah, so let's say Tkachuk doesn't work out. That you got limited space, and so there may be some more casualties, but you can get a guy, Evan Rodriguez. I like him a lot. He played with, I believe, Pittsburgh last year. He was on a $1 million deal. He was very strong. Again, he was a guy who had, let me make sure, 19 goals and 24 points. So not far off from where Niederreiter was. Yeah. He's had a really big resurgence in the last couple of years. And I'm a huge fan of his, and he would be a guy that you could slot in on that third line or on the second line, to be honest. Because the bottom six is still pretty suspect, because your best players on that bottom six right now are Tanner Jeannot and Colton Sissons, which I love Colton Sissons with all my heart, but it's Colton Sissons, it's yeah. And so he's like, again, I hate to go back to UT, but he's kind of the Dane Bradshaw of the Predators hockey.
Great comparison.
He's there. He works really hard. He's, a guy that people like, but and every once in a while he'll help you beat the number one team in the country in Florida with Bruce Pearl. But it's, that's the bottom six is just weak. And that's kind of where it was last season. Again, if the Predators, Tkachuk is going to be their way to get them into being an actual contender. A guy like Evan Rodriguez, I think, would be somebody who good that takes this from a, more football metaphors, from an Independence Bowl team to maybe an Outback Bowl type of a team. A guy, a team that can get in that second or third round. Colorado is just, Sakic has done such an amazing job there, getting young guys in there, getting good deals. These guys are coming in there playing at a discount because, who wouldn't want to play for the Avalanche right now? And so, I think that's a guy that they get if Tkachuk falls through. But then again, we didn't really see, Niederreiter being on the Preds radar much, in the media. And so there could be another trade option out there they're working on as a backup, but it's going to take something in order to really get them into a win now mode. It's going to take some work and probably take a lot of it. I wouldn't be surprised if they go and get somebody at the trade deadline next season as well to kind of help bolster that. Good.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It does really feel, to continue the Tennessee comparisons we're doing, probably too many of these.
I love that Outback comparison. That was a good
that's great
analogy. That was good.
But it feels like with the Avalanche now, it's Tennessee with Georgia, where Georgia, you had them in 2016, you beat them 2 years in a row, and then you fell asleep at the wheel and they just zoomed by you. And it's with the Predators. I mean, you had them in the 2018 playoffs. You disposed of them relatively easily, and you get to the second round against Winnipeg and you lose in one of the worst game sevens in the history of hockey. And and then just the Avalanche looked at that and they went, "Hey, what if we just went and we did what the Predators aren't willing to do, and built the best team in hockey?" Like it just feels very similar. And so you look at that. Obviously, with Tennessee, maybe we can get recruits and kind of get back on the level, but it's not like that with hockey, where you can just go like, if we try hard enough and we pay them an unlimited sum of money, maybe they'll come here. It's just not that easy. So I don't know. I don't know what you do. What do you do to level that playing field at this point? I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, it's I've been kind of a guy who's been in favor for the past couple of years to do the rebuild, to get down to the big part, keep your Forsbergs and your Yossi and all of that, the Duchesne, but kind of, having a year where they're just not very good, because, you get those draft. That's how they ended up with Askarov. They got a guy in the drafts at 7th at 17, which is awesome. But, maybe that's just what you need, is you need to start, shedding contracts. You need to start getting stuff at the deadline. Again, moving a guy like Ryan Johansson, like at the deadline for a team that really wants to compete or, finish up. Calgary, Calgary also could use a guy like Ryan Johansson, down the road or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see, because if Tkachuk signs, that means the window, at least they believe the window is back and wide open. But the amount of what they're going to have to give up to make that work, and and additionally signing him to a long contract for a bunch of money, that's going to hurt the long-term prospects in the future as far as them being a team that competes in 5 years, rather than the next 2. And so we'll see how it turns out. I think if Tkachuk doesn't work out, I think they can make those smart moves to kind of make this a team that can kind of still be in stasis. They're a little bit better. So it's going to be interesting to see how Poyle handles the next few weeks.
Go for broke, please.
There you go. We'll end with this. Nico! Because that video does really good numbers always on this one. Me just shouting Nico. It always does great for Tennessee folks.
Dude, the recruiting, man. That is, we've hit the gold mine with my own show with Tennessee folks. The recruiting, it's
people
insane.
love it.
And I think the connection is that the folks that are the most connected online and our Tennessee fans are huge recruiting people. So they follow 247, they follow Rivals. That's
like
why
huge sickos who are on the message boards all the time. Just who will tweet at any recruit who posts Go Big Orange or anything. They're right there in the mentions. Like, let's go pick Big Orange. Let's go.
The one that I hate is that there are people that are so informed in all of that in my opinion, to an almost creepy extent. Like we'll say stuff on the show and be like, oh yeah, this kid something, and then somebody in the comments will be like, well, don't you know that his uncle works at the gas station down on campus, and that his uncle was talking to my friend, and that they and I'm like, how was I supposed to know? Right. It's not like I don't spend. I have stuff to do. I can't spend all day like scouring this kid's family history. Oh
my goodness!
That's just people love the recruiting. That bottom line of that whole thought.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, I'm sure we were all there at some point, being on the message boards and talking about that stuff and thinking, caring very wildly about a high school guy's, decision as to where he's going to go. I can't imagine what it's like now with NIL. It's got to be something crazy. But, on the other hand, you get something like with hockey again. He's like, you're going to draft a guy and you're not going to see him for 3 or 4 years, which still blows my mind, because it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess we'll find out in a little while. But it's one of those where, again, like you talk about Tennessee, getting these recruits in and stuff like that, and keeping good track of this. Hockey is like, we can watch a guy who goes and plays high school football in Texas, and he's going to be on TV probably, or on, the Ocho on ESPN or something like that, but you can see it. But you're not going to be able to see a guy who plays in the second level Czech league, for the next 2 years. He's like, good luck finding a stream for that type of stuff. And so thankfully we don't get that. In hockey, the best you get is, well, this is what his agent did for another guy, so we'll see.
Put him in Knoxville. Why are the Ice Bears not one of the Predators affiliates? What are we doing? Why are the Ice Bears not involved here?
I believe they're not ECHL, and so
they're not.
Yeah, and so I think they just they've been with Florida Everblades for the last 2 years with the ECHL, but they switched over to go be the Panthers affiliate, and so a lot of talk about them going with Charlotte. As being that ECHL thing. But I'd love to see more stuff with the Ice Bears. But again, talking about Haslam, I'm excited. We're going to see a little bit probably more.
If there was anybody who's going to do it, it'd be Haslam, to be like, hey, we have Knoxville over here. Like, let's just go ahead and tap in here.
And it's such a fun little cult. I've been to a ton of games. It's just such a fun thing to do just during the winter. Just go to the games, have a beer, watch hockey.
It's fun.
And it really is. And
there's an unbelievable smoking section outside that you get to.
There is.
Yeah. And can I?
People think I'm joking. It's the most packed smoking section you'll ever see in 2022.
Yeah.
But speaking of, Knoxville and stuff, I've floated this idea several times before, but why not get Nashville and Carolina in a Stadium Series game in Neyland Stadium?
I'm saying
that's a good one.
I mean, I thought for years the dream of the Bristol game was never going to happen. And why not? I mean, Nissan Stadium apparently did fine. I had COVID, but they did pretty well. But I mean, Knoxville would be perfect. You probably could have a little bit better as far as winter weather, things like that. It's you're right there in between the two teams. I can't see why something like that wouldn't work.
Right there in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Have they done? They haven't done one at a college stadium yet, have they?
I do. Did they do Notre Dame?
Yeah, they've done Notre Dame. I think they've done like Yankee Stadium or something like that.
Yeah. I know Yankee Stadium. Yeah.
I do wonder if they've done like a feasibility study, because there just aren't the people who are Predators fans. Most of the time are not Tennessee fans. Like they're just not. There's not a lot of crossover there. So Knoxville is actually kind of an odd spot to do that.
Well, that's what you want to do. You want to grow in. You want to tap into that market.
Exactly
You
right.
want to get them engaged because it's not far. Nashville is not far from Knoxville.
Yeah, I mean that's my point. Like with the Ice Bears, it's never made sense to me that they aren't affiliated with the Predators because there is such an opportunity to grow the game here. Because I've always found when I explain to Tennessee fans like about hockey and then get to the point where they'll actually watch a game, they go like, yeah, that was like really violent and crazy and really fun. Like you get people in and you go, it's kind of like football, except like even more violent. And
it's the most fun in-person sport to go to, I think.
Oh yeah, hands down.
And I think that will always be an advantage for hockey. And it's just when people go, like you said, they're like, oh yeah, like the Atlanta Gladiators. I went to so many of those games like growing up, and it's just people like it. And like you said, it's a cult type thing. And you're like, why was the Atlanta Gladiators not the affiliate for the Atlanta Thrashers? What are we doing? Like, why was that not for the suburb folks? Like, why would you not just have that easy pathway to build that? And you're like, oh, watch this first round pick from who will be on the roster in a couple of years for the Thrashers. Just watch him now and then get ready. Like it's just so weird. They don't like, that's not just an obvious thing. Like the Braves do that. You have the Gwinnett Stripers and you have the Gwinnett Braves and then the Atlanta Braves. So people like were able to just kind of get ready. So you can watch Acuna before he goes to Atlanta. You have Rome, Mississippi. Like it all makes sense. Like the Braves organizational structure based on their cities and farm system all makes sense. And it works. And you tap into that market where it's like, oh, you want to go watch a rehab start for Max Fried? Guess what? It's $7 to go watch him in Gwinnett for the Silver folks. Like that's an easy pitch.
Yeah, and I think, again, growing the sport and growing, the team in the state, because again, there's not a ton. I think St. Louis is maybe the closest team to Nashville. I mean, there's
wow.
I could be wrong on that one, but
that's
I mean,
probably right.
They've got space. They can take advantage of the fact that Nashville's hometown football team, the Alabama Crimson Tide. You get your fans down there in Alabama to come up to Nashville more often. And, in order for something like that to do like a stadium series or something like that, you would need, obviously you need the interest, which I think Nashville has, but you'd probably need somebody who's got connections, both with the University of Tennessee and the state as a whole, a guy with a whole lot of money and pull to do that. And I think they've got that now. So
who could that
maybe. So again, there's some good things. One, I get to
Hoops among us. Let me go ahead and let me walk around the University of Tennessee campus and see how many of a certain person's last name pops up around campus. Maybe that person could do something.
Send this to Bill. Send him this podcast. See if we can get him to.
Oh, definitely.
Bill, if you're watching, come on.
Stadium Series.
Ice Bears affiliate.
Yes.
Stadium Series in Neyland. Let's go.
Yeah, and give some more money to the UT hockey club. They do a really good job. Their jerseys are phenomenal. I bought one actually.
They are fantastic jerseys.
Yeah, and so shout out to them. Give them some more money too. Yeah, come on. We got this. Bill, we're your team right here. We've got all the advice you could possibly need.
Hire us to do a show. Give us money.
The marketing will take care of all of it. Run any like where you're like, oh, will fans like this? No, they will not. Stop it.
Yeah,
it's what college football czars and ADs and presidents have needed and TV execs specifically have needed a lot the last couple of years.
Wouldn't you love to see a bunch of bachelorettes on a pedal tavern go down the hill, around the stadium, things like that?
There you go.
Yeah.
Bryan, Charlie, what can the good folks check out from On the Forecheck and everywhere else this week from you?
We've got a lot when we talk about, some of the free agent additions that are coming up, the ones that are there. We're going to do a little bit more trade talk. We had an article last week talking about what we saw at development camp, which actually was a whole lot of fun. Again, we got to see Askarov just acting a fool and it was amazing. But yeah, there's a lot going on. Hopefully, if a move happens in the next week, that may be kind of the end of the offseason for the team. So we'll see, we'll find out and we'll have a really, really good idea of where this team is headed probably here in the next week or so. But yeah, on the Forecheck, you'll see a bunch of stuff. You can follow me on Twitter at Bryan Bastin. And again, Renegades Puck with Charlie Saunier on YouTube. If we drop another episode, we had another one last week, come and check that stuff out and we'll keep you up to date.
There you go. Charlie, what about you? A to Z Sports. What can we look out for you this week?
A2ZSports.com, the Big Orange podcast every Monday around 3 p.m. Usually I don't drop at a specific time because I'm lazy and just, we just kind of record whenever we can. But actually, I can sort of break this news. We're going to start doing live stream shows. We did our first one ever yesterday. It was a resounding success, actually. I was kind of shocked by how many people tuned in. So there's a little breaking news for you. We're going to do live podcast, and then during the football season, when that begins here in like a month, I do a game day show with Jonathan Cropton for A to Z too. So that's halftime post game on A2Zsports.com. So just go there, check it out.
There you go. Bryan, Charlie, thank you as always. I greatly appreciate it. And I will talk to you both next week.
We'll be there.